Hey, it's Miss Phelps, and tonight we're going to be talking about conditional statements. Yesterday we talked about inductive and deductive reasoning, and conditional statements kind of work right along with that. So let's get to it. Alright, a conditional statement is a statement that can be written in the form if P then Q. Its symbol is P and then an arrow and then a Q. So that means the symbol itself means P then Q. Okay, so I know that's a little like, what the heck does that mean? Confusing. So let's talk about that. An example. So if you live in El Paso, then you live in Texas. Well, the first half of the statement is called the P section, okay? So the part over on the left is if P, and then the part over on the right is then Q. And if you'll notice, if the sentence always starts with an if, and then has a comma, and then it tells you a then part. So it's what they call a conditional statement. So you have to have both parts to be a conditional statement. Alright, the converse is the statement formed by exchanging the hypothesis and the conclusion. So basically you put the back part of the sentence at the front. So the symbol for that is going to be if Q, then P. Let me move up a little where. Don't know what that was. Alright. So its symbol is if Q, then P. So now they swapped it. So it says if you live in Texas, then you live in El Paso. Now you and I both know that that's not necessarily true, and we can come up with a counterexample like we talked about yesterday, which would be if you live in Texas, then you live in Palestine, or then you live in Austin or Dallas or wherever. Alright, so let's keep going. The inverse is the statement formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. Now, the word negating means we're going to put a not with it, or we're going to do the opposite of that. So its symbol is a little wave in front of both parts. So it's the wave of P, then the wave of Q. So it's saying if not P, then not Q. I'm practicing on a new computer, so bear with me while I work through this. It has not been an easy night with this. Alright, an example of that would be if you do not live in El Paso, then you do not live in Texas. Okay, so I put the word not into the front part and in the back part. Okay, let's go to the next page, which would be the bottom half of your paper. Okay, contrapositive is the biggest word, and it also does the most things. So the contrapositive is the statement formed by both exchanging and negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. So you swap the front and the back, and you put a not in both of them. Alright, so here we go. So it would say its symbol is not Q, then not P. Alright, so it says, if you do not live in Texas, then you do not live in El Paso. Okay? And that is actually a true statement. You can't have a counterexample that would negate that. Alright, in the example, the conditional statement and its contrapositive are both true. And the converse and inverse are both true. So they sort of go hand in hand. Alright. Related conditional statements that have the same truth value are called logically equivalent statements. So the very first one that says, if you live in El Paso, then you live in Texas, that's true. And this one that we just had, if you do not live in Texas, then you do not live in El Paso, that one is also true. So that's what it means when it says logically equivalent. Alright, a conditional statement and its contrapositive are logically equivalent. We just talked about that. And so are the converse and inverse. Okay, so the middle sections are also true. And they belong together. Alright, the converse of a true conditional is not necessarily false. Alright, all four related conditions can be true, or all four can be false, depending on the statement. And we'll actually talk some more about this tomorrow in class, so, don't stress out about that. We're going to get to these. They're a little bit challenging, but as long as you can remember which part does which thing, you'll be okay. I try to remember that conditional statement is always the very first one. It has to have an if and then section to it. Contrapositive is the longest one that's one word, and it does the most stuff. It swaps front and back, and it gives a not in both sections of it. And then the two in the middle, inverse and converse, well, inverse has the word not in it, and converse swaps the front and the back. Alright, have a great evening, and I'll see you in the morning.